Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's video. So I have a really interesting video that I want to discuss with you guys today, and it has to do with the real reasons that I believe we are getting Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. The reasons as to why Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s look so different than the previous 6 Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that we have been used to. There are two major reasons that I personally believe Konami pulled the trigger on this massive change right as the 20th anniversary is coming, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But before I do get into that, obviously I'm showing you guys clips from the Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's trailer, and if you've seen any bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! The past 20 years, you can already tell that 7's, the characters look much different. They look much more generic, if I dare say, than the typical Yu-Gi-Oh! Style and Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters look. There is a simple answer to this question, and the simple answer is it's a brand new studio. Studio Gallop was the studio that has been essential for Yu-Gi-Oh! For the last 20 years. Besides what's commonly referred to as Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, which is done by Toei Animation, Studio Gallop has done Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pyramid of Light, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Studio Gallop is responsible for every single animated Yu-Gi-Oh! IP, besides Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, and now, besides Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Will we ever see Gallop doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Again? That's another great question that remains to be seen. And while the change of the animation studios is very interesting, and we don't really know definitively why that was the case, it could be that the contract ran out and Konami wanted to go elsewhere with the production of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. It could be that Studio Gallop's asking price was too high. It could be that maybe Konami lost faith in Studio Gallop to perform consistent results with the anime. I really don't know. I'm going to do a separate video on that, on what I think might have caused the downfall of Studio Gallop, but we're not going to talk about that in this video. In this video, I want to focus on the two reasons why Konami said to Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge, which that's the new studio doing 7's Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge, why they said to Yu-Gi-Oh! Bridge, hey, this is how we want our characters and our cast to look. And there's two major reasons that this happened. The first one being the price and the cost of this type of animation. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Animation that Studio Gallop did was very crisp, it was beautiful, it was awesome, the character design was really, really cool. And while the animation for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's might be really good, obviously designing your characters like this, drawing your characters like this, is going to save you money. And it might not save you a lot of money episode to episode, but from show to show, it is going to save you a ton of money. And I do not need to go into detail, as I'm sure everyone watching this video already knows, that the anime industry is struggling. The anime industry is known to have low wages. It's known to not pay the people working on the show properly. It's known to have a lot of overworking. It's known to work a lot of the animators into overtime and, again, not compensate them properly. And the anime industry, when it comes to payment and even when it comes to maybe income for a show like Yu-Gi-Oh!, is a complete mess. And so by doing this, by reducing the costs of what it takes to actually create a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, you can maybe spend more money on paying higher quality animators so that the animation looks crisper. You can maybe pay more money to bring in higher quality voice actors, higher quality writers, and you can kind of allocate those funds elsewhere. Now, will Konami do that? It remains to be seen. Konami might just pocket the extra money that they're saving, but the cost of designing and drawing the characters this way is much cheaper. And I know a lot of you guys might think that I'm completely talking out of my behind since I don't know too much about the industry, which is fair, but if you don't believe me, at least believe Ebina. Ebina is one of the best animators that has worked on Yu-Gi-Oh! He worked on Yu-Gi-Oh! During Zexal, he worked on Yu-Gi-Oh! During Arc 5, I believe he left after Arc 5 ended, and this is what Ebina had to say, the animator, when he saw the character designs for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's. So in two different tweets, Ebina basically says, Of course, with a new studio and staff, you're going to have new designs. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is notoriously difficult to properly ape. The only reason it's stuck with the current aesthetic is Takahashi gave the baseline for up to Zexal, Miyoshi did Arc 5, and Hara did Vrains, and was able to replicate the feel of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Because he had worked on most, if not every single series, and now, as we know, the character designer for Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s is the same character designer that did Sailor Moon, someone that has not been associated with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise like a Miyoshi or a Hara, or of course, Kazuki Takahashi, the man who created it. And ape, for those that don't know, basically just means to imitate, to mimic, to do an impression of. And so, Ebina is basically just saying here that it's very commonly known that in the anime industry, it is very difficult to properly draw and consistently draw in the style of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I guess even though Ebina doesn't really state whether it's more expensive or less expensive, the more generic character design leads me and leads many others to come to the conclusion that they will be saving a lot of money by doing this, and whether that's going to lead to a, again, higher quality of animation, a higher quality of story writing, we're just going to have to wait and see. But regardless whether it leads to that or not, that is definitely one of the two major reasons that this change happened. There's no longer anyone that can carry on the designs of Takahashi, and Konami was obviously fine with that. I mean, if Konami was not fine with that, they would have made sure that this show represented, at least look-wise, what Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been the last 20 years. And Konami, maybe they have marketing data, and I'm sure they do have marketing data that we don't have data that probably says, hey, even if we change the style of Yu-Gi-Oh!, we should still be fine. And that's basically the conclusion they came up with, and that's the trigger that they pulled. So here's the second major reason that I believe we have this much of a change in not only the character designs, but keep in mind the younger looking protagonist. This is the youngest protagonist. Yuga is 11 years old, and this is the youngest character age that a main protagonist has ever had. 11 years old. Now, there is a big reason why this happened. And the big reason why this happened is this is obviously trying to target younger kids and younger fans of the show, or younger, hopefully, to-be fans of the show, and get them into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I've said it many times, even though I love the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, I love the storylines and the characters that come out of it, the main point of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, it is all going back to selling the card game, the TCG, and the OCG. It is to increase revenue and get people into the show, and then ultimately get them into the card game or the mobile game or whatever it might be. Right now, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Player base is getting older and older, and that's been pretty consistent for a while now. That's what our data tells us. And obviously, Konami knows that as well. Konami wants to bring in as many new fans, as many young fans as possible. That's why you have Rush Jewels being featured in 7s, which is a more simplified way to play with a brand new card pool. Right now, it is very hard to get someone who is the age of 13, 14 into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game. There are so many mechanics, there are so many rulings, it is a very overwhelming game to get into. Hell, even if you're my age and you're in your mid-20s, it is a very hard and difficult game to get into and to fully understand and master. By introducing a new way to duel, by introducing younger characters that will be easier for a younger audience to relate to, it's much easier to get newer fans into the game. And I know a lot of people might be saying, well, Dylan, it's the hardcore players that buy the cards, right? It's obviously the hardcore players that bring in the most money, and that might not actually be the case. There's a really interesting article called The Player Pyramid, Who Are You Targeting? And it's written by Matthew Bell. And there's a really interesting graphic of the player pyramid, and this is a pretty basic player pyramid. I actually think that I even learned this in my marketing class. I have a bachelor's in business marketing, and it's actually the new players that can bring in the most amount of revenue and the most amount of funds. And the reason for that is simple. There are so many people, there are more people not playing the game than there are that are playing the game. The article even goes on to state, on first glance, it might seem as though the hardcore/core players are the ones that are funding your game and giving you all the feedback. This is an extremely common trap to fall into as a designer. These players frequently represent a loud minority of your player base. These players can give you excellent insights into top-level play and the micro-interactions that make or break matches within your game. Something they are often not so good for is understanding the new player experience or features dedicated to the casual users. And I think that's important because I think that also speaks to a lot of fans of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. We as fans of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, I mean, I've been a fan now for 20-something years, really my whole life, and I know a lot of you have. We are used to the same old stuff, which there's nothing wrong with, but for someone that does not watch Yu-Gi-Oh!, this might be what it takes to bring in new experiences. And when I read that article, I was like, well, I kind of have to take a step back here because I'm used to kind of the same old stuff with Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I've enjoyed, which I loved. But maybe I haven't really thought about it from a perspective of not knowing the show. And I definitely haven't, because it's very hard to do that, right? It's hard to forget all of your biases about Yu-Gi-Oh! And try to get someone into the show that hasn't seen it or maybe that isn't interested in it. I think this show will be more appealing to fans, even if they are older, who have not seen the past 3 or the past 4 or the past 5 Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, because the game is going to be much simpler to get into. So not only does this player pyramid theory speak to getting new fans and the importance of getting new players into the game, but it also speaks to getting new people into the anime and what is going to appeal to those new fans. And so I believe that the two major reasons that Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s is happening is, one, it costs less to design, and that's why the designs are much different. And two, and maybe the most important one, it is to bring in new fans to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise and to get as many new players in, because new players can be just as, if not more important than the hardcore players in terms of funding your game and in terms of keeping your franchise alive. Konami has done a masterful job with Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of sales for the last 15, 20 years, and I think they have a lot of marketing data that suggests a move like this is not going to hurt them. I know there was a lot of outcry. It reminds me of the outcry when Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal was first shown. It's very similar. I know a lot of you might not remember that, but I remember it pretty vividly, that everyone was saying, oh my god, the cast is so young, the show, the colors are too much, this isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! What is this? Very similar to how Sevens is being perceived by a good amount of people. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal turned out to be a pretty fun show. And Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s, even though the cast is young, I will say this: if the storyline is good and the storyline is captivating, which it has all the potential in the world to be, even though it is a younger cast, then I will be really okay with the next few years and Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s going forward. But guys, those are my two major reasons as to why Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s it looks so different and is clearly targeting a different demographic. And I will reiterate that just because it is targeting a younger, fresh demographic, it does not mean that the storyline can't be fun, that the storyline can't be captivating, relatable, and enjoyable. And I'm really hoping that Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s delivers on the story. I have all the faith in the world that it will. Big thank you to Pen Sparks for drawing the Yuga and allowing me to use the Yuga that is on this thumbnail. Definitely check out his DeviantArt. I will link it down below in the description. And a big shout out to J_Bix, who linked these articles and always posts really good insight on his Twitter page. Definitely check out his Twitter. I will link it down below as well. A special thank you to my Platinum tier patrons: Alexa Baker, Glen McGookin, Jorge Carrillo, Horace Maye, Goosey Q, Vincent Van Der Veen, Panther J, Smith620, Jorge Leon, Blue Maiden 28, Jarrett Buller, and Gabe G, and to my Diamond tier patrons Jesse Wood, Latrell Smith, Sean, and Melinda Phantom, and to my Egyptian God tier patron Syn Cloud. Thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon and who is a channel member. I truly cannot tell you how much it helps me out. And thank you to everyone who just watches these videos, because without you guys, I would not be able to do this. Thank you all so much for watching. I will talk to you down below, and I hope you have an amazing day.